Hello, hello. Here we are again, coming to you from Broadcast Team Alpha with the Paranormal World Show.
Mhm.
And we are coming to you on 44 different platforms around the world, so you can find us just about anywhere. And my name is Aage. I'm on the host here today. And uh, if you are watching us on YouTube, that's the place to be, because that's the only place we can monitor the chat room. So if you have questions and things like that, just put it in the chat room. Use capital letters. That'll be easier for us to discern which one is the question and what's a comment. And so then we will see you in the chat room too. And let me also tell you how you can make a contact with me and also my co-host Snorri uh, on the Broadcast Team Alpha show. And you can go to broadcastteamalpha.com, send us a message. I'll get the email, and I will get back to you with whatever. But maybe we could help you out with something, whatever it is. And I have a wonderful guest that I've known a very long time with us, and we have also. I want to mention too that we are also transmitting on Conscious Awakening Network. They You got to go visit those people because they have close to 50 different shows over there. And that is, they talk about all the stuff that both you and me are supposed to know about, but it's been kept from us over the decades or millennia, maybe. It's been a long time since we heard anything resembling truth from government, but we have a lot of it over there. So go over there to consciousawakeningnetwork.org and have a look. You're going to enjoy yourself over there. And also, you can find us at broadcastteamalpha.com. And if you're over there, just go into the picture gallery. There's 5,000 pictures, unbelievable pictures that should not exist, but they do. So anything from pyramids on the moon to, yeah, whatever you think of, it's over there. So I want to introduce our guest, Evie Lorgen. I have known Eve for, I think, 24 years now, because her and a friend, they came to Tucson to be a guest on my TV show there 24 years ago. And we've had a lot of fun there. We did the interview, and you know how interviews go sometimes. They get into every corner of the universe, and you have fun talking about stuff that you never planned to do. And we did that. So anyway, today we're gonna hear from Laura Eve again, and what she will be talking about has a very deep alien connection. I read her first book, which is called Love Bite, and alien love bite. That could get interesting, folks. So listen really close here. I she's done so many things that I'm going to let her talk a little bit about what she has written and what she's doing. So, welcome to the show, Eve.
Well, thank you, Augie. It's a pleasure.
Yeah,
I,
tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing these days, and also mention your books so we can have a
okay.
look at.
You mentioned the first one, which was, gosh, like 24. It was in 2000, year 2000, when The Love Bite came out. And that was really the launching of a book about alien interference in human love relationships, which we called the alien love bite, or the love bite for short, through the subpopulation of what we're, a lot of times people just say, oh, the ET experiencers, alien abductees was the old term. People who have multiple visitations or not, and then case histories that demonstrate that is this indeed was an orchestrated or set up or interfered with relationship in some way by beings that were recognized to be some form of ET or alien that was witnessed by one or both partners. So that was the first book. And by the way, I'm updating a second edition to the Love Bite and my second book, The Dark Side of Cupid, which came out in 2012. And then just to say, The Dark Side of Cupid is an extension of further research and working with people therapeutically. So I'm mostly a therapist counselor first and then a researcher second. So I have actually more adopted a therapist approach to how we deal with this phenomena, really. And so,
Mhm.
because my degree, well, I could go off into another tangent, but my first degree was biochemistry, and I worked in that field for about 7 years. And then I switched over to get a master's in counseling psychology because I really wanted to work with people and understand, trauma and the alien abduction phenomena. I wanted to learn about it and do hypnotherapy and really work with people. So that's what I did. And so I just changed my career completely from science to some therapeutic, psychological work and more esoteric stuff as well.
Mhm.
So to continue, I'm updating both my books with second editions, and they will be out hopefully by this spring. I'm not sure the exact date, but I added additional material to both of them and just a more insight into what has happened since the origin of the first editions and where I am to date now.
Yeah,
Yeah, so because so much has happened, and I think it's not so common that someone is in the field as long, like a really long time, like 30 years now, I'm embarrassed to say. But to really stick with it and observe over time, let's say people who've had encounters that I was in my first book, and then 20 years later, how are they? And are their experiences the same, or do they have different ways of dealing with it, or does it just stop happening anymore? So for some people, it has. Like in my life, my alien abduction stopped. And I believe because of not only doing trauma recovery and trying to be careful about what opens the door to that, but actually more prayer and being closer to Christ and Jesus Christ has helped tremendously. So
yeah.
I still take a therapist perspective of understanding the phenomena with alien encounters and abductions and complex trauma, and then also understanding the paranormal and supernatural elements that really happen a lot with these people and
Yeah.
the populations, and how those things are connected with them, with the beings they're interacting with, and their family systems. So,
I'm wondering also, I want to hear more about your alien interaction just a little bit here, but being a psychotherapist yourself, have you been able to analyze your own experience so it would make more sense to you? I know a lot of people in your position say, yeah, they can talk to other people and it makes sense, but I'm different. They can't figure themselves out. Have you gotten beyond that?
well, I don't know if I've gotten beyond not having this have affected me and even still affect me. I mean, because it was really, when I think about it, I was born into a family system where these things happened.
Mm.
And so I don't know any different. So these things have really shaped my life and my worldview and my personality and my, let's say, responses to trauma that I've had to kind of undo and recover from over the years. So, yeah, so I had to deal with my own stuff and come to understand that more clearly so that I could come to a better clarity. So, yeah,
Yeah, so it's a long journey though. It's
it never
you
stopped.
yeah, there's times when we think, yeah, okay, I got it in the box now. I figured it out.
Mhm.
And then new memory come, and
That's
now you got to create another box.
Yeah, it expands and deepens. And
Yeah.
at least with older age, I would say that I've come to understand more of why people might have the reactivity they've had in their early years without understanding, which a
Mhm.
lot of it, of course, if we go back to what are these aliens doing to people besides what we've learned in the early days of just medical experimentations or, hybrid breeding programs and the usual things that are on the major shows, but there's more involved in terms of emotional, psychological, and even spiritual um, qualities of what they're doing to us and why they're interested in that effect. So, that I think is marginalized, or people tend to see it either like black or white. Like there's camps really where they
Yeah.
it's either like all bad or they're all good. But in
Hmm.
reality, we have a whole range of experiences where you might have like encounters and abductions with, let's say, grays in your childhood, and they might do a
Hmm.
number of things that are physical, but then sometimes if you're not afraid and you're used to them coming, it seems like, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
But later you might see them as being evil or bad, and if they've scared you. So, and then sometimes people have experiences with one type or many other types at different times in their life, or with the military who might be working in conjunction with certain alien groups, which we know now for sure that's been going on.
Yeah.
And so there might be different kinds of experiences and reactions based on the type of encounter with the type of being and what they're doing.
Yeah. I'm thinking too that uh, from having interviewed people for, 25 years or so, the the alien interactions and abductions, it seems to me like it was a little different before, let's say 10, 20, 30 years ago. They were more medical examinations, they were more cut and dry things. Now they are a little more educational. Some
Yeah.
people are being not abducted, they're invited, come here, do you want to go for a ride? That happens more. Or they are more friendly these days, the interactions. Have you experienced anything like that?
Well, some don't seem as malevolent. And I think that they've learned also over time, what's the best way to interact with us so that we don't have fear or we don't fight back.
Yeah.
And sometimes it gets us in agreement, or I still think there's a Stockholm syndrome thing going on with many, because that is the conditioning. Because when you're
Mm.
when you're that young, you're conditioned by these beings, whether you think you are or not, I think,
Yeah.
so, but there are some educational things where they will show you things and try to teach you things, and they may not be poking and prodding on your body, but they might be
Hmm.
trying to incorporate a belief system or an understanding of physics, or using your telepathic abilities or whatever. So there's and different things that they may do. So, but I guess the reason why I was so motivated to really do what I'm doing and publish the books was because, hey, there's these people whose relationships are being completely set up or manipulated or broken up.
Yeah.
And they're really like there was a counter action by many of the alien groups and probably humans who didn't want too much truth to come out. They always want a certain narrative or us to believe a certain thing that makes it so it's not a problem. But if you know a little bit too much, then you could be a problem, right? Or you could connect the dots between human groups and different alien groups and like what they're really doing and some of the spiritual warfare. So what I noticed, it was just interference and what we used to call spiritual warfare tactics, for lack of a better term, but really it's
Hmm.
targeting with different methodologies that they could target you to prevent you from going to a support group meeting or having a relationship with a certain person, getting a certain job, marrying a certain spouse, or not wanting you to marry somebody, like breaking up relationships and then wanting you to be with
Yeah.
somebody else. That was actually really common. So I found that, wait a minute, this is like much more invasive in our lives and conditioning and directing us to, relationships and jobs and what we believe about things. And, that's we need to look at that. I
Yeah.
mean, how they do that and why they might be doing that and what are the for me, it's like I want to know the relationship dynamics of the family dynamics, the relationship dynamics of the things that they're setting up or orchestrating or testing us with or breaking us up from,
Hmm.
because sometimes they're like, they're not one of us. We want you to be with them, or they'll make you want to have children with somebody else that they've decided. So there's all these other considerations of, I'd say there's some manipulation going on and I don't like it. And I have,
Yeah, that's it interferes with freedom, doesn't it? So
yeah,
that's according to their agenda, but it does not fit in with our sense of freedom.
no, and we may not know what that is. And have a skewed idea even. I'm like, we think we're free and then we're not.
Yeah.
Or like, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but one of the things that was really important to me is like, how can we find the truth? How
Hmm.
can we get very lucid in our regular day consciousness, but also in our nightly sleep and dreams, so that we can become aware of being aware, which is really the definition of lucidity, and then be able to observe things more keenly from another perspective, so
Yeah.
that we don't automatically believe and accept, let's say, the dream. And a lot of times it will program in the dreams or in the astral, or, program your consciousness or interact in such a way that they want you to normalize what they want. So if you are lucid, you could observe this and you could see them for what they are and what they want, and who you are. So I
Hmm.
believe that if I wanted to take it to the nth degree of how do we know the truth, and how do
Yeah.
we know best for us, is that we must understand ourselves very deeply, like know thyself, but our own spiritual nature and our soul nature and our own human personality, body, how we respond to trauma and our family systems. The more we know who we are with our true identity, not something we're adopting to run away from something else, which is
Hmm.
which happens a
Yeah.
lot in trauma, by
Yeah.
the way. So the more
There's,
we're pure in our identity, the less we're going to need to be, let's say, oh, well, they're my star family. I'm one of them. I'm a hybrid. So there's a lot of that going on. We're like, wait a minute. If you always were growing up feeling like you don't belong, that something's wrong, then you're not going to feel comfortable in your identity as a human. You might have been abused in your family and felt like your parents weren't your real parents. And then, oh, well, the aliens are my family. So that's kind of like a dysfunctional way of
hmm.
not original identity issues. So as
Yeah.
a therapist, it's like we got to deal with this original identity issues and traumas first. Then we can have a better perspective of what's happening and have more control over whether or not they access us and abduct us or interact or
Yeah.
manipulate. Yeah.
Yeah. And, there's so many different types of abductions or invitations to get on the ships, and communication between interdimensional species, and it gets very convoluted in there. But when you think back on your experience, what kind of experience was that? How was your interaction with interdimensional, or maybe it was similar dimensionals?
Ah, that's a good question. I mean, because my family's still alive, I can't say too much about their experiences.
Yeah.
But hindsight, I see that our family system was conditioned to accept a benevolent extraterrestrial narrative through channeling, and then to normalize or accept that, oh, they must be interacting with us. They're seeding our dreams or they're interacting with us and it must be good, right?
Mm.
But we don't remember, but there's still trauma. And there's a dichotomy there, right there. If there's a dichotomy of, amnesia, definitely trauma of not remembering and having night terrors and being afraid of the dark, and seeing the animal eyes and the typical abductee things, then we know, wait a minute, if there's trauma there and they're trying to tell you that they're good and we
Yeah.
should accept them and identify with them, and that we're helping humanity with higher consciousness, that's actually a programming narrative to accept abductions happening underneath.
Mhm.
That what happened to my family system. But I'm
Yeah.
not saying that there's not any benevolent beings, because there are, and they could exist on both levels, human or physical and interdimensional. So I've come
Yeah.
to realize that over the years. But what I think that's why I wanted to learn more about it later and do the therapy, because I felt like there was too much, when there's too much accepting, oh, they must be good. I kind of want to have more encounters. Oh, I want to meet them. And I want to do channeling, or I want to like meet them. And when you have this want to invite them in, that gives them permission of the consent to access, interact, and abduct, because you're
Yeah.
believing in them that they're good and that you want it. But if you realize, if you've done your trauma work or whatever, and then you might not want to do that and close down those access portals.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you have to believe nothing and just perceive the truth clearly in your own being, what your experience is, and then use that as a platform to find out what is the volition of these beings based on their behavior over time. What's the
Hmm.
fruit of create? Are they creating Stockholm syndrome people who are channeling these special missions to be an ambassador for this or that race, for all these things to happen in the future? And then this person never ends up being the ambassador in the future. It doesn't happen, and they die of all these weird health issues.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah,
that happens a lot with many of the ones that I've known over the years. They've died early deaths. To be blunt.
yeah. It's really strange. A lot of the channelers out there, they're channeling alien beings. You wonder, what is the source?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
is there a source or isn't there a source? So we always have to wonder about that, because some of the channelings out there really sound goofy. They talk about things that are gonna happen and it
Yeah,
doesn't.
right.
So yeah, so we have to be a little careful about how we believe things. And for your experience, though, did you indicate that there was trauma that came out of it, or was it a friendly one?
Well, the initial ones, I think they conditioned me to actually, I remember one when I was 4 years old, and it was a daytime event, broad daylight, before lunch, outside in the backyard, and my mom and a neighbor and myself and a girl who was like 1 year older than me playing on a swing set in the old San Francisco Bay Area, and how I perceived the event. And I didn't know anything, right? When you're a kid, you don't know nothing. So you perceive whatever is I think they project images in your mind to make you accept whatever it is.
Yeah.
So what I saw was like a huge jet liner, like a classic jet flying overhead, like very, very low, making a noise and like hovering over the backyard. And then
Wow.
trying to like, oh my God. And then the friend I was with, she was just terrified, screaming, like running off. And I was like, wait, look, I know them. I'm not afraid. And then trying to tell my mom while she's standing there with her girlfriend, who's also the mom, and they're like frozen in place. And I can't talk to them. They're like, like in these old Twilight Zone where like they're frozen in time and space and you can't get their attention, and then running off to chase the girl who ran away to try to keep her from being afraid of them, and then no memory until, well, there was missing time, and then trying to talk about it later with my dad who came home from work in the afternoon, and then trying to tell him about the big jet I saw over the backyard, and then my mom saying, no, no, don't tell him, don't tell him, don't talk, no, no, no. I'm like, what's that about? So we never really got to the truth, but in the ones that I remember clearly, and these were childhood ones, and they were remembered often as lucid dreams, like the one when I was 11. It was remembered as a lucid dream, but it was, knowing I have to go outside at night, walk down the street because I knew they're there, and walking down the street barefoot in my pajamas to see the light in the sky down the road, and then waiting, and then, but there was a conflict inside me. There was a part of me that knew I was supposed to go, and they were trying to tell me that everything was okay, that they're good, but I knew that something was wrong, and I was crying and mad at them. So I had a
Mm.
conflict of emotions going on even then at 11 years old, and then going down the street, and then the craft was like right above, and then it let down a white light, and then it sucked me up like, what do you call it, levitating my body up into the craft, and then complete blackout. So that was just the early ones that I remember. But later in life, I remembered more as I
Mm.
started investigating more and doing more hypnosis and self-hypnotherapy at night and lucid dreaming, and then then I started working with researchers and going to conferences and meeting James Bartley, and then we had our own support group in, San Diego County, and we learned a lot from each other about things that we grew up with that we thought were like nothing. But then we realized, wait a minute, they did that to you too when you were in school, and they called you in for the extra hearing test, or they tested you with these ESP cards that my dad brought home from Lockheed. So all these things actually tied in with not only just the alien abduction or the alien encounter thing, but it seemed to involve a military alphabet soup agency, whoever, that were also interested in taking us and doing experiments on us. So there was both going on. And I think now in hindsight, some groups within the government or whoever these shadow government people are. They knew who the original groups are that were being abducted from the original contracts made, and they had to give lists of names of people and families. And so they would always follow them and find out more about them, and then sheep dip them maybe into other projects or research. And
Yeah.
so that's where you always hear, like with abductees, I mean, they're telepathic or they're very psychic. And that was one of the hallmarks of, the thing. And then they would test you later and then, ask you questions. And then, yeah. So that's what we learned. And but then I also had experiences which were very strange where I would be taken, or there would be like this is common now, where remote viewers who have access maybe to technology as well, and the shadow group, shadow government, whoever, if they have reason to believe that you're in contact with a benevolent extraterrestrial or one that's not on their list of okay, that they
Hmm.
know already, then they will basically interrogate you or hack into your consciousness. Really, that's what they did to me. And they came in a dream. They're really remote viewing, and they were trying to pretend that they were my uncle, who was actually passed away, I think, maybe. So I knew it really wasn't him, and they were like pretending to, like, thinking I'm not lucid in the dream, and then interrogating me all these questions about certain ET groups that we knew about. And then they weren't happy with that. They couldn't find my records. And then they gave me a coded message. And then a month later, I ended up going someplace, invited to go to the mountains in Sierra Nevada, somewhere. Yeah. And then have an abduction there.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and so then I think they tried to get more information, and I couldn't remember. But what was interesting is like with one of the people that we had the cabin with, who was a total non-abductee. I
Yeah.
think that too, because she ended up having this terrible nosebleed like the next day. And I remember something happened because when they brought me back, I came back with this blue-green light. So the blue-green light kind of had like this shimmer to it, and it basically brought me back to my body. And whether or not they do a bilocation or it was an astral thing, it wasn't unclear. But, you know, usually like when they take people, like what we would know is like, oh, did you get a nosebleed? Like you wake up with a nosebleed because they stuck an implant in your nose,
Yeah.
or they changed it out and put a new one in. So they
That's what
did
I
that to
thought. Hmm.
the woman. And sometimes they get the wrong person. I don't think she was a classic abductee. But I've heard stories over the years where, let's say a woman and her daughter visited a girlfriend at her place and they switched bedrooms so that the daughter let her girlfriend have her bedroom and she went in the guest bedroom. Well, the aliens came that night and the aliens got the girlfriend and not the daughter. And the girlfriend was like totally freaked out because the aliens thought her to go in that bedroom. So there's little things like that that would happen where they'd get the wrong person, or like the wrong person wakes up and knows that something's going on, and then they have to put them out or do something to make them black out so they can go and abduct the one they're after.
Yeah,
So, it's so many things.
I know a lot of times too, they follow lineage in families. So if you're sitting out there listening to this, and your mom have told you, your dad have told you that they were abducted or they had alien contact, and you
Yeah.
don't remember anything, go find out, because you just might have had an experience too, but you don't remember. That's what hypnosis is for. Talk to Eve about that, because it's very likely that you had one if your parents had an experience.
Yeah. And the trauma really, I mean, one thing that I learned, I had great difficulty in getting like the amnesia memories, like from early childhood. I would remember things later, like bits and pieces, where I would have like group experiences where we could confirm each other's experience because we had a group, we can call it a group abduction, or a group astral experience in a parallel reality, but we could confirm each other's presence in that experience.
Mhm.
So there's that. But with the deep trauma, I've found that if we can find a way to have safety and spiritual covering, I think through Christ is helpful. And working
Yeah.
with the dissociation that is often the result of early trauma, then we have more greater ability to get the memory back. But sometimes it's dependent on the part of you that's holding the memory, which we can call an alter personality or a fragment. If they don't feel safe in your regular life, they won't let you have the memory. They hold it and they're protecting you or they're protecting other parts. So that's
Mhm.
where we get into having to understand complex trauma and dissociation, which is a very common for people who've had abductions and the what we call the MyLab experience. But now in contemporary, basically since Corey Good and a lot of these later ones who have come forward with their Mars experience, they would call it the secret space program. But
Yeah.
really, it's just another name for the same things that we noticed early on with military and like the Montauk Project and some human and alien collusion in some project that utilizes alien technology or off-world experiences or being clones, all kinds of unusual things. So there's
Hmm.
just all kinds of things being talked about now.
You mentioned something earlier. You mentioned the alphabet soup, and
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
there I remember two stories of abductions where the one that was abducted, they were in the room, they were on a table being examined, and the aliens that were there, they walked off, so they were alone in the room for a while. So she got down from the table and looked around and walked down a corridor, a curved corridor, and looked in the rooms and looked in one of the rooms. There were two grays in there and one human with a military uniform. So the military, the dark side of military,
Mm.
have interactions. They're working with some of these extraterrestrials. In my
Yeah.
opinion, of course, if the government is working with them, they gotta be the scuzzballs. They wouldn't
Exactly.
they wouldn't work with anybody good.
Like rocket science, yeah,
Have
that's
you
true.
have you heard anything like that?
Yeah, in fact, one of the men that I interviewed, actually, I think he's deceased now. And this was way back in the year 2000. I think it was 2000, 2001, before 9/11. I interviewed a man that we codenamed him Jared, but he was a early prototype of a, well, we can call super soldier. I don't know if he called it that. And he remembered an experience back in 1967 where he was in the Vietnam War and they made him a super soldier by a project when he was actually an adult. And it was very weird. They brought him to a near-death state and then they create a digital copy of a personality or an alter they want to create that have certain abilities programmed in them. It's like a digital synthetic alter, but in
Yeah.
order to get it back in the body without the body rejecting it, they have to be in this stasis like for 3 months in this near-death state where their body's in this tank and then they're like floating above the ceiling while they're being hooked up to, I guess, gradually get used to accepting the digital download and it connects to their energy centers. Anyway, so he got the download, he survived, many of them died. This particular alter personality had abilities to like bilocate physically, while his physical body is like in the here and now. And then his alter could just bilocate somewhere and do some physical op or go into a time travel loop as long as they didn't meet in the same loop of time, then he could be off on a time travel op while he's like here in physical reality. But anyway, what I was going to tell you is that one of his ops was as a super soldier in one of these deep black, weird, unacknowledged special access programs was to work with humans that had access with aliens in ships and alien technology going around in ships and abducting people for certain reasons. And then their job was to help program them about what screen memory they wanted so they forgot what really happened. And so they were actually used to help abduct other people
Mm.
with not only humans, but humans who were working with certain aliens who were doing it. So they were working together, and then they would
Yeah.
have them help and then program them at the end, like at the end of their experience, so they wouldn't remember what really happened. And like you could choose between A, B, or C, what memory do you want? And then they would pick
Yeah.
one. So we know now, of course, the screen memory thing is very common. And I think in the early days, we they just didn't know all the things that were going on. So they would accept this wonderful, benevolent thing, whatever the screen memory was, to accept, well, this must be good. But people that I've worked with over the years, and I'm talking about since 2011 till today, interviewing this particular woman from Finland who was extraordinary and psychic and lucid, who stopped her abductions. And she had like Draco abductions and many beings, as well as military. She was in one of these MyLab projects, super psychic, and just extraordinary person who had the ability to work with all the methods that we did over time, and that she worked very hard to get the alter personality fragments that were trapped, let's say, by certain alien beings working in another dimension under the Draco, and then integrating and then using her spirit, eternal spirit, to basically take control to override what they were trying to do so they couldn't do it anymore. So she actually literally stopped over time having the abductions. And so we were
Oh,
doing many interviews over time to observe, well, what happens next? What happens when you stop it, like mid abduction, and you wake up so they can't get you, and then how they keep trying to access in these different ways in our consciousness in like dreams. And so she was able to refine it so that, she would know whenever they were trying, and then they would try to do these love bite things too, because it's part of the phenomena. And when they would
yeah.
try to set you up with somebody new in town, and then she'd like see it in her dreams, and then she'd see the entity connected to the person they're trying to set her up with. And then what's what can be really frustrating is when because you could perceive these things, when someone's being manipulated by them or by whatever they're doing with technology, and that the other person is not aware, and they don't know.
Hmm.
And so what do you say? You can't say, well, you're being manipulated by da 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 da, because I saw this. They're going to think you're nuts. But
Yeah.
over time, you're going to start to be able to tell. So these are the things that we experienced over time as we investigated each other's experiences. And then we would get into fights, and they would turn us against each other and manipulate us. And then we'd realize, oh my God, the aliens did that. I'm so sorry. And then we would make up again and realize that they were just doing this and manipulating us. So we had to really be more keen on, how they do this so that we don't succumb to it. But unfortunately, there's a lot of targeted people who, like for people who are not lucid and aware of themselves, or clairvoyant or whatever, empathic, they're going to fall for the manipulation, and they could turn against you, and they won't know what compelled them to turn against you or get mad suddenly, or they'll have a nightmare like, oh, they had a nightmare about a researcher. And so they won't go, they'll think they're bad, or the aliens punish them for going to see a researcher, and they got like this targeting punishment thing for talking to the researcher or whatever. So then they associate in their mind, well, that researcher's bad, I got to stay away from them, they're the reason why I'm targeted, and it's not that at all. I can
Yeah.
tell you how many times that happens.
Hmm.
you know
Yeah. A lot of times, or sometimes, people can wake up in the morning and they know they had a really bad dream,
yeah,
but maybe it wasn't a dream.
yeah.
What do you think?
Well, always I would say check for body marks, check for
Yeah.
physical symptoms, check if your cell phone battery just suddenly went down in energy, check your light bulbs that burned out, the clock's being messed up. Um, yeah, and any physical symptoms like, you're just suddenly sick,
Hmm.
or sometimes they would create fights. Like in the Love Bite, there's a case history. It's kind of funny, of a man who was dating this woman, and they were on this little rendezvous trip and sleeping together. And then the aliens came and basically scared her and appeared to her with some poking object or something. And they basically traumatized her to wake up in a fright. And so she was, but it was like kind of like an amnesia, like it was a bad dream, but the aliens really came, and they scared her on purpose because they didn't want him with her. And so the next morning, she was just like totally emotional, just turned on him, was completely angry, and just broke up with him on the spot and like left. So
Hmm.
these kinds of things can happen if they come and they don't want you being with somebody, or they can do things, and then maybe you don't remember, but you just have this strong feeling and reaction to like run or something.
Yeah. When they do that, let's say that they don't want you to be with someone, do you think that is for the benefit of their purpose or your purpose?
Sometimes it's both. Like
Mhm,
sometimes the aliens don't want you with someone because that someone is under a different group that they don't they think is bad for you or bad for the agenda of what they want you for. And
mhm,
sometimes it would be helpful, like I've seen this happen with alien groups who are actually protecting their people from some human groups who are like the shadow government cabal people or whatever, and they'll actually protect you from them because the human people might cause those people harm. And actually, they many of the human groups try to target abductees too. So there's so many different things going on, and I don't want to make them, that the aliens are all good. And there's some that are apparently more friendly, but they're a different type and they don't abduct. That's
mhm.
my experience. So it's,
Yeah,
yeah.
but the story goes on, and there is, I know they were, I forget who said that now, that they think there are millions and millions of people around the earth that has been abducted.
Yes. I would agree that my mentor, Barbara Bartholick, who is now deceased, and she was the one who did the hypnotic regressions and the research on the people that were in Dr. Carla Turner's books, as well as many of us who corresponded with her. And she was the one who told me about like the whole love obsession, but love bite thing.
Mhm,
But she did die an early death. But one thing that she did say, and what has been demonstrated in some of the cases, and actually in the Dark Side of Cupid that were Barbies, that this phenomenon affects other people just as much as the quote direct abductees. In fact, it might affect them more since they're less aware and they're so easy to manipulate because they're not aware of the constant interactions and influence. So they really affect the whole, they don't have to take everybody.
yeah.
You know what I mean? They don't have to because it's easy to get them to comply. For example, if you could be abducted physically, you're late for work for like an hour and a half, which is like a lot, and they'll make it so that the people at work don't even notice that you were late an hour and a half. So,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah. What about those people that say, why not me? I want to get abducted. What kind of mentality is behind that? That is a
they
pretty big chance to take, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, because the trauma is can be very, very severe, and a lot of the medical issues and the health issues, and not being believed, and the relationship issues, the family issues. A lot of them have like trauma related addictions and behaviors to most people just don't remember and don't want to remember, especially earlier generations who didn't even know this was happening. They alcoholism or using a spiritual bypass thing with their church or with workaholism, whatever, to prevent the real knowledge of the subconscious knowing that this stuff happened. So
Yeah,
it's nice that we could speak more openly about this with people or even with our kids. Oh, are you having any weird dreams or what happened? And so that they don't have fear, but they also know that if they don't want this to happen anymore, there's things that you can do together. You can pray. You can do things together to make it so that they're believed and they're understood, and that takes away a lot of the trauma just to be believed.
yeah.
You know? So.
There's a lot of interesting things happening right now with Trump taking over, and he is cleaning house. Boy, is he cleaning house. And now I think there's a couple of videos out where they indicate that they have found that the gold at Fort Knox may be missing.
I've heard that before. That's
Yeah,
not good. That's not good at all.
and
Oh,
that's just one of the things that is cleaning up. And the corruption in previous government is so phenomenal. But I
yeah.
have not heard Trump talk about what is he going to reveal about the extraterrestrials. Or
We all want to know, right? Yeah, it always seems like, oh, they're going to tell us, and then, oh, the big deal about the drones. And I mean, I've heard a lot of
yeah,
stories about that. And there's actually channels where you can, like, there's this one, it's called the Homesteading Channel. And there's people who will send their experiences in of alien encounters, drones, the poisonous fog, the whole whatever's going on, and get real life testimony and people who know what's happening, so that there's a lot of ways that you can find out. And I don't think anything official who's still part of they're always infiltrated with the ruling classes who are
Mhm.
actually, and that goes on to another tangent, but what they call them the Illuminati bloodlines, for lack of a better term, but they're usually involved in the control of every major organization or power on the earth to drive narratives and control to be what they want. So if
Yeah.
you go against that narrative or understanding and finding out, then they'll put some pressure on you. I think that's what a lot of the targeting is about. Or, like we used to get like reptilian reprisals back in the day. That's what we called them, because that's what Barbara Barthlet called them. And James and I, we'd be on these shows together and be like, oh no, I got a reptilian reprisal after the show, and we had these horrible nightmares, and where they did X, Y, and Z. And so we'd get punished for talking about the weird stuff,
Yeah.
or the connection with the humans and the aliens. Or they really didn't like it when we talked about the reptilians and the Dracos connected with the human military, and they didn't like that at all. So,
Yeah, and everybody's running around saying we want disclosure, full disclosure. Well, we'll never have that, but we will have some kind of indication that, yeah, the extraterrestrials do exist and they come here and visit. That disclosure has already happened many times from different governments. It's
yeah.
just that we don't talk about it. Medvedev in Russia, he was interviewed on live TV, and they shut off the interview, but the camera was rolling. And the interviewer asked, "What can you tell us about the extraterrestrial presence?" And Medvedev, he said, "Oh yeah," he says, "when we take office, we get this dossier, and it explains about the extraterrestrials here, how we interact with them." And he talked about it for about 3 or 4 minutes. And the interviewer thought it was so good, they ran it live on TV in Moscow.
Wow.
Nothing about that anywhere else in the world. And NASA, there are people at NASA saying, yeah, there is extraterrestrial presence, but nothing official. I think people are so stupid that they just got to have somebody knock on their front door and bring an alien with them and say, look here, here's the evidence.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to fathom. Of course,
Yeah.
I grew up with this so that it's normalized for me. But I still think there's some who are just not very aware, and part of it's they don't want to,
Yeah.
or it affects their worldview so much that it's a threat to their worldview and their identity. So it always comes back to identity, really. If it's a threat to their identity and their worldview, they're not going to want to listen. And
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
don't mess with my paradigm. I'm comfortable here in ignorance. Oh
yeah.
boy. But what let's sidetrack a little bit. We all hear about the drones and everything now. What do you think is going on? Are we being led down the primrose path down to a false and fake alien invasion, or is there something substance behind this?
Ah, interesting. I've heard different views, but one person who's not very popular or doesn't have a big YouTube following, um, following the drones like right after. Remember how they all started kind of like in New Jersey
Mhm.
and they're all being seen? Well, there's a man, his YouTube channel is Sargel18. I don't remember his first name, but he's my age, right? And he's been doing this research with what he calls the Wanacue River or the Wanacue Reservoir vortex.
Mhm.
I guess it's in a rural region where there's trees in kind of a mountainous area of New Jersey, where it's been a known vortex or interdimensional portal for many, many years. and that he would take photographs and videos of things coming in and out of the portal ever since the 90s, and then got famous for doing this and was on talk shows, and then he got really censored uh, for a while about because he recognized the orbs and the ships and the beings and the ghosts and the different things that would all come out of this portal were very similar to what people see when you see orbs and beings, that they're actually beings in the orbs.
Mm.
So there's connections. So anyway, he was censored for a long time and took a lot of amazing photographs and videos of this. So anyway, long story short, recently since the New Jersey bang of all the drones, he was saying that that's where they were coming from, like this portal, and that the military ones that were really coming in, that they're the ones looking, right? They're the ones who are on the scene, like looking for something else that came out of the portal. So they're
Mm.
basically on a search mission to find out what came out of it, and let's track it down so that people don't know about the real stuff. So then
Yeah.
all the military ones and the humans operating, those supposedly from his were the ones hunting down what were the real ones coming out of the portal.
Mhm.
Then, the Courtney Brown had come up before this whole flap of the drones since, I don't know, October, November last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. He knew, he said, okay, gonna have to step up this disclosure thing and then push the envelope with these benevolent ET faction that he is from, which is a type of gray. I'm not saying I agree with everything, but he's actually says a lot of things that I know are true about the phenomena itself and the
Mhm.
humans holding the information back like they always do because they're part of the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, and saying that the good ET factions who are here to help know that the bad ones are in control of the governments in the world and most of the abductions. And that's why it's such a problem, is that they're controlling everything. So the good ones are trying to push the envelope to push the disclosure by creating more sightings and more
Yeah.
ships and more drones. So he said they were going to increase their presence, he said, and then right after he said it, like within a month, they all start showing up. So
Yeah.
he's correct about this stepping up of the beefing up this interaction to force it to the surface, basically.
Yeah.
So there is a war,
Yeah.
there is a
I
so
think there is a plan behind it. So we are, if we keep our finger on the pulse, we may have an idea, but we are all going to discover what is the plan fairly shortly. It's going to happen. But now we have 5 minutes left, and tell people where they can get a hold of you and what you can help them doing through hypnosis, and tell them also what they can expect to find in your books and your new book is coming out. So talk a little bit about that.
well, my hopefully by the spring, my Love Bite Dark Side of Cupid will be out. The Dark Side of Cupid will be first, and then I'm also going to have an Italian version of the Dark Side of Cupid. And there's additional material in there. And then the Love Bite will come out later, just in English for now, with additional material. So I beefed it up to add things that have happened since the original publication to show these things, happen in many variations, and also more discussion on what this is and how it happens in different ways that are really related to the same phenomena. And really a lot of updated links and references and what I suggest for therapy and learning about this, and many, suggestions on like complex trauma. I'm more therapy based as opposed to find your ET star family based and let's do a channeling and a tarot card reading. I don't do that shit. I'm a therapist. So I work with, let's talk about things. Let's understand the trauma beneath it. Let's find out how we can deal with this with we can do lucid dream therapy. We can keep journals. We can learn communication skills. We can add in a meditation practice, a lot of prayers, group prayers, deliverance, complex trauma recovery, hypnotherapy, and groups. So I do individual, and I probably will start a group after I move, probably maybe by the summer, and do a group. And I do most of it remotely through Zoom, and that tends to work better for most people. And
Yeah.
so that's what I do. And so I do a combination of what I've learned through, being a relationship therapist and also complex trauma recovery, and what I learned through Dr. Corrado Malanga in his therapeutic model of basically it's not just to find out like what happened with the aliens. This is to find out to deal with it so that we don't want them interfering anymore and we stop the interference. And so that's the process I do through a type of guided hypnotherapy and insight-based connecting with your eternal spirit and using that as a guide to connect and working with the dissociation.
Yeah.
So it's all those things, and I like to do it with a real therapy perspective where we can do, talk about it and share with others and also do individual and work towards trauma recovery.
Hmm.
So that's how I work. I don't do it to try to find your star family to make you feel more special and do a tarot card reading and then everything's better. That don't work. If you ask
Yeah.
me, I mean, like I laugh about that and it's like it makes me angry that a lot of people who claim to be, researchers and doing groups are doing like programming. Sorry, but that's
Yeah.
my view. I
Yeah.
want to do therapy. I just want to do real
Yeah.
counseling therapy. So,
Where can they get a hold of you? I know your books are on Amazon.
well, they
Uh,
will be. My
yeah.
website is, yeah, the best way to contact me now, evelorgen.com. And then my email address is on the contact form of my website. And
Okay.
I have an Alien Love Bite Telegram group. So that is kind of nice because I could update more quickly on that. So for now, that's what I'm doing social media wise. I'm going to hopefully beef it up once my books are out. But it's
Yeah.
it's to do it all. I'm an old-fashioned person. I don't like being on the internet all day.
Yeah.
So
So the books will be on Amazon then.
yes, and probably
Yeah.
other outlets too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those of you out there that is not on Telegram already, you need to. There's a lot of good information there.
Yeah. It's an easy way. I like Telegram.
Yeah.
So
Hmm. And what's now you are moving, but what is next for you right now? How about that for the next 2 minutes?
well, I really want to be active in launching my books in a more successful way where I'm kind of controlling it as the author and publisher,
Hmm.
and then make my life more efficient in terms of how and where I live so that I could spend more time doing more of what I want, and then also being able to put time in this phenomena, like maybe doing groups and launching the book and doing interviews. So just kind of changing things around. I'm in the, well, I don't want to say I'm in the Asheville area, and there was a lot of devastation from the hurricane. And
Yeah.
I just want to be in a place where I don't have to deal with that anymore. Or, yeah,
Yeah, and that devastation, they had a purpose. They needed the land, so they arranged
well,
for things to happen.
hidden
But
things.
that's another show.
So
Yeah, all right. Well, thank you very much for being with us. And gosh, it's good seeing you again after 24 years.
I know. Hey, we're still here. That's good, right? We're still here.
Yeah, we're still let's do another one, but not that long. Let's do that much sooner.
Okay, that sounds good. We can talk more about the MyLabby stuff if you want. That's always interesting.
Oh,
So,
yes, that is something we want to hear about. Okay. Well, thank you very much for being with us, and we will see you again. And for those of you out there watching, until next time, be good to each other.
mm.